All right, we'll get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Tech Drop-In for Megaport in the Asia Pacific region. Today is Friday, the 30th of May, 2025, and I'm your host, Jason Bordajenko. Happy to have you with us today. We've got a hopefully less PowerPoint heavy deck or Google slide heavy discussion today. We're going to be talking mostly about MCR, being Megaport Cloud Router, and MVE Megaport Virtual Edge. There's been quite a few changes made to our portal ordering experience, and also some of the products and the way that those are specified, and a couple of updates to functionality. So in particular with MCR that we'll drill into. So firstly, a little bit about me. Been a couple of weeks since I've been running the show here. My name, as I said, Jason Bordajenko. You can call me JB. I head up the pre-sales solution architecture function here at Megaport, based in the Brisbane office, our headquarters. And you can find me much easier than spelling the surname, jb@megaport.com. Or there you go, if you want to hunt me down on LinkedIn or any of the other platforms, you will find me. Happy to take questions at the end of today if you're connecting via our Zoom stream. You'll be live and we can bring you into the panel, or else if you're connecting in through LinkedIn, we'll do a quick scout of those towards the end. And this will be recorded, and we'll post this out to the Megaport Solutions channel on YouTube once it's done. So here's our agenda. We're going to go for a quick intro, the almighty review of where we sit for those that are completely new to Megaport, just to give you a bit of an overview and perhaps stimulate some of the ideas about where you'd be using some of the functions and the features that we're talking about later today. Bit of a recap as well. So in my last update, we spoke about the open metrics and the telemetry, service status, and creating API keys in order to get that. So we'll be doing less on the command line today and less in terms of the developer piece, but there have been some updates to the service status components in the portal, and that also includes the what's new functionality. So there's news about what's new. Accessing the services page, getting that service log and the details that are available within that. We'll also talk briefly about the physical port itself, so the port in Megaport and the ordering improvements that have been made there, particularly around where our customers have been asking us to supply the cross-connect on their behalf. Now, it's not going to be in all of our data center locations where we're able to do this, and the option still remains yours should you be at the data center where you're requesting your Megaport, that we can allow and provide the PDF to yourself, which is the letter of authorization. It is possible to do that, but as we'll demonstrate today, it is also possible in some locations to have Megaport fully facilitate that physical cross-connect between either a cloud provider port or your own port, and the physical Megaport demarcation in that location. And I mentioned there's some exciting news that we're starting to launch, and it's early availability at the moment, but ordering process flow is live, the change for MVE, and you'll note that there are new sizing placeholders there. So minimum has always been 2 virtual CPUs, maximum has been, up until the last couple of weeks, 12 virtual CPUs, but we have been having customers who've been asking for, in certain locations, certain markets, and with certain loads on the MVE software itself for higher capacity than 12 vCPU. So we're pleased to announce 16 and 32 virtual CPU core instances. Now they're in limited supply, and in fact in the demo instance portal that I'll show you today, they'll be grayed out, but they will be progressively getting rolled out for 3 of our images across the MVE suite, and we'll be increasing those over time. So if you do have questions, queries, or you want them to turn up at locations, obviously taking advantage of things like 25 gig VXCs to cloud providers, 100 gig ports, and larger private DC connections as well. And I think I flagged this a little bit on a previous drop-in as well, jumbo frame support for MCR. So that's our own cloud router product, and specifically with ordering to cloud service providers. And I'll do a demonstration today with Amazon, which is great because next week here in Australia, the Amazon Web Services Summit in Sydney will be live. So we'll be featuring that in some of our customer conversations and showing how it's possible to actually build those jumbo frame connections across Direct Connect live. And that's where we'll leave it for today. But to kick off, a little bit about the services before we start looking at those particular pieces and go through those demos. So I mentioned before the products that we spoke about, and those are the access products. They span across the three main areas, which is the physical ports, 1, 10, and 100 gigabit per second, the MCR or Megaport Cloud Router, and the MVE, which is the Megaport Virtual Edge product. So both of the previous two are NFVs or Network Function Virtualization appliances. Traditionally, Megaport has been known for a port to port, and that is DC to DC that you see on the left. So that allows you to build connections or interconnections between two locations on the Megaport network. It may be within the same data center, it might be across different parts of a single metro, across states, or even internationally. And we are able to build those on demand, and this is putting the service bit into network as a service. And it is that you have full control over the bandwidth granularity on that. So if your workload only needs 10 megabits per second, day-to-day type traffic, that's fine. You'd set that at 10 megabits per second. Should you need to transport a large amount of data, let's say between Australia and the US, you might have that connection live and building all of that 10 megabits per second background telemetry, for example. And then for a particular workload migration, you may need to burst that to the full 10 gigabits per second. Now, whereas with the traditional telco model, it would not be economically feasible to keep that 10 gigabits per second forever and a day. It is possible with Megaport to burst that capacity up to the 10 gigabits per second. We'll give you that rate limiter change if you have 10 gig capable ports or more on both sides, and that's done within about 1 minute, which is the 60 seconds you see at the bottom of this slide. That can be to other data center operators, so it's not limited to a single data center provider across all of those countries and those cities that we operate in, and the footprint is expanding daily, and I'll actually show that in a later slide or a later demo where you can get those locations. The other piece is you don't actually need a port on both sides. If you have a physical device and you're building a hybrid network with a public cloud, for example, that's the next scenario of DC to cloud. So hybrid clouds are quite a common deployment scenario where you don't need to physically obtain a physical interconnect with a cloud service provider. We're able to do that even in locations where those cloud service providers are not, because we can use those VXCs or the virtual cross connects in order to transport your traffic back and forward. So that allows quite flexible arrangements. Obviously, the burst up or down, we can support that as well, where the cloud service provider business rules and logic allow that. Some allow the dynamic resizing, others block the dynamic resizing or would allow an upgrade and not a downgrade in place. But as we mentioned before, as the new service provision is about 60 seconds, it's quite easy to make those changes, even if it's a manual break and replace, rather than just a change in size in flight. The newer concepts that have been announced are cloud to cloud. And cloud to cloud was modeled around our Megaport Cloud Router or MCR product. And that's been quite recently limited between 1 gigabit per second to 10 gigabit per second with 4 different speed and pricing tiers for throughput. But we've actually now announced 100 gigabit per second capable MCRs. So it is possible to build larger MCRs, and that could be between two regions of a single cloud, or it could be between multiple cloud providers. So it's quite flexible. We'll be demonstrating that today, obviously, in light of the MTU changes, so allowing jumbo frames. And that allows for larger distance or larger latency connections, more efficient transport of data, certainly between ports and definitely between ports in the hybrid cloud scenario or the cloud to cloud scenario. Virtual Edge has been introduced with MVE. That's obviously the VE part of MVE, and that allows us to join internet service connectivity into a virtual network function appliance, and we're basically allowing a subset of different functions, generally falling into three categories. And those three categories are SD-WAN, obviously need internet connectivity for that, and then combine that with the power of the public cloud connections we spoke about. Routing, which is an advanced feature set on top of what we're seeing customers do with MCR, that they might need to utilize their own management and monitoring functions that aren't supported by MCR, but we can actually take a known good or working config with MCR and then transfer it straight into a self-service MVE environment and basically leave all of the virtual connections untouched, but allow a greater unlocking of features that are wholly that customer to obtain. The third one is security as well. So things like virtual firewalls or even firewall enablements on SD-WAN edge deployments that we're starting to see. So they're the three broad categories. We will be touching on all of the above today. We won't be touching too much on internet exchanges. However, we do offer, as well as the internet component of MVE, we can offer Megaport internet and allow that to be connected to the physical ports that customers take with us in data centers. And part of that actually allows our internet exchanges, which we run as part of the Mega IX service globally in about 27 different markets. That peering exchange, which is traditionally open to large CDN networks and ISP or the eyeball networks, that allows customers who just wish to take advantage of, say, an out-of-band management network, a small connection from 20 megabits per second all the way up to multiple gigabits per second. It's possible to obtain that from us and utilize the expedited routes that we gain by having our IX relationships. And lastly is the NAT gateway, which is an extension of some of our products that we've described earlier for customers that are utilizing very, very large scale. Think, 500,000 or more NAT translation sessions. And these are cost economic features that are available to customers who are using those within cloud environments today and might be looking at taking some of those advantages from multi-cloud environments, but not wanting to get hit with the bill. How do I actually transition those private cloud arrangements back into public IP? So that's where we're seeing the network address translation benefits. All right. So that was the quick intro about Megaport offerings, and I think sets the scene for what we're going to describe. So I'm going to get into the portal first and talk a little bit about the service status piece, accessing the services page and what's changed. So firstly, I've just jumped into the portal. If you have not got a login, this is the URL, portal.megaport.com, so you can jump in there. I would say if you don't have an account, you can self-register. If you are aware that your company already has one, don't go in and self-register using that company account. Have a chat with your admin and see what level of access they may deem appropriate for you, and they can add you under that hierarchy. Otherwise, you won't see any of the services that are tied to your particular account. So should you need that later, we need to disable and re-enable that account through your company admin. If you are net new, obviously you can start afresh and start building your services from there. So I'm actually logged in to the production portal today. And it's great. I have a lot of services in this account. Some of them are down because this is our sales demo, so not all of them actually get connected in real time. But we can see here ports. We've currently got 31 of those. MCRs 13, MVEs 29, and 103 VXCs, only one IX. So I can drill into any of those, or I can have a look at our service status page, which shows any of the maintenances or outages. Luckily, we don't have any showing. We can tag to the resolved outages page, and we can see components that are alerting that are related to the services that we have. So if you've used any of the cloud service provider dashboards, the personal health dashboards, this should be quite familiar as well. The area that I wanted to highlight today was actually up the top under what's new. And this takes you to our hopefully regularly updated. So we're seeing roughly month to month. This is the April update, end of April. So we should be seeing one in the next week or two. And these updates can be further expanded if you click on the top just next to where it says Megaport. It will take you out to a page that builds on those. Or we can see things like what we'll describe today. So the activity logging improvements, the jumbo frame support on MCR, and what we'll display today on MVE hasn't even made it into the what's new yet. So we'll see that in the next update. So the first component here is the activity logging updates. And these are some of the changes that some customers have noticed things have started to move. This is not service status that we showed just before, but user activity. So it is important to note user activity now only displays logs that are related to the currently logged in user, not at the company-wide level. If your user level is a company admin, you can view all users and the information on their activity across that company. Likewise, and we spoke about the API key generation for the open metrics drop-in session, that's now located under the company activity logs, and it's not tied to any specific individual users. However, API keys still are. There's some filters that are available in activity log. I'm not sure if I go into that level today, but let's have a look at where that's available. So at the top right where I showed you service status, that's this page that we're currently on. To the right of that, there's actually a drop down, which would be the initials of the user account, so JB in this case. And where we'll log into is the user settings page. Now that shows some details about me. can see that I'm a company admin in this instance, so I can drop down into both notifications and user activity. Before we go to user activity, I'll just touch on notifications briefly. I don't have any of these selected. That's because this is a shared environment across hundreds of users that actually log into this. If you are doing this in a production instance, it is possible to drill down, and these are the toggle on off to quite a granular nature to the email notifications. So those that are in a financial role or an auditing role are probably going to use the top two. Those that are looking at service status or service maintenance, such as when something is configured, when it's decommissioned, an email when transitions, such as state up or down or end of contract. That's where all of those options can be tagged on or off. And you can see that I can do that as a whole or individually set those preferences. So that's quite granular. Now that differs to the user activity logs. Some of the activities that are done and logged here will actually show as email notifications, but in general, following through those notification categories will make more sense of these user activity logs. Now, I mentioned before, these are tied to not only mine, because I'm sitting at a company admin level, but any of the users that are within this tenancy. If you're at a level below company admin, it will be possible to only see those that are yours. So just note that. I can see that there's been some utilization of this just today, and I can actually drill into more detail. So there was a action on a service that was cancelled, or I can see an update to a service. And this was when I was testing some of the components for today's demo. So this actually is a response from the underlying API. That's why it's got a lot of detail and information, but that shows all of the required configuration detail that might be needed to restore that service. Now, we also have some users that are using both our API and Terraform instances, and they're telling us that this is actually very valuable information. They can see the exact results of what the order is getting placed without necessarily needing to drill into something like the browser tools. A new API order, this is actually me placing it via the front end, the user interface that you're seeing in front of you, or even things like particular logins, and that's my login there that you're seeing. So these user activities are quite useful to be able to drill into. The other area that's changed that we mentioned is the API keys. We can see API keys across the board here. None of those are going to be much good without the keys the private keys that are sitting behind them. So happy to share them. But the service updates will be then tied under API orders to that specific user. It won't show those that are outside of that company. So that was the key components and the changes that we wanted to share around both the service status and the activity logging. Next, I wanted to talk about port ordering, and that is particularly around the supply of a physical cross-connect. Now, we will see this by logging into the portal itself, and I'll say create a port. I'm just going to call this drop-in, so we'll filter. So there's nothing currently sitting there. And by creating a port, we will see this location picker, which shows all of the data centers that we have availability at globally. In order to know which ports, which services, or sorry, which locations have the available cross-connect ordering, this is being built into our Megaport Enable Locations page. It's not possible to see this currently, but it will be coming as a location filter. This is where I dive into the API very briefly. So we do return a field which populates that table with all of our locations. And I'm going to use this little tool here, which will query all of those locations that are returned by the API. And I'm going to ask it to return a list of names where the cross-connect availability is set to true. Now, we're going to take that information for one of those that is currently true and then use it in that enabled locations filter and show the process of ordering that physical cross-connect. So we'll just wait for that to return. As I mentioned, if you are in the portal, you will see that list of all of the locations. This one here, if you search for Megaport enabled locations, it doesn't even need you to be logged into the portal. You'll be able to drill down into particular areas, particular geographies, and see what is available at those sites. So we now have a response, and we get this list of locations. I can see that, for example, Equinix SY1, NextDC M1, NextDC B1, these are all sites within Australia, and the list is actually going to return global, where we support the ordering of the physical cross-connect. So let's pick on one of those sites. I might pick M1 for today's demo. So I'll come back to the portal and I'll actually paste that location in, and I can see NextDC M1. We get asked a series of questions. Before we even get to that point of being able to order a cross-connect, we need to look at requesting the port. So we can see there I've requested a 10 gigabit per second port at that site, and a field has popped up under the term. Now this is not available on month-to-month terms. It's available on 12-month and up. We can see that that's coming up as enabled, and it is possible to then add in the physical cross-connect as part of your service ordering. If you choose no, we're still going to provide you with the port and the LOA to build that. So the only difference here is including the cross-connect tagging, yes, there is a one-time fee that's available, and then it adds a monthly fee regarding what the data center would charge us for that cross-connect. So it's on charging that component. This is also available for diversity pairs, but note that it would be scaled up for those number of ports as they're required. In today's instance, I'm just going to build the port. I'm not going to build a diverse pair. I won't request the cross-connect. We can see that we're getting a discount there because I'm putting that on a 12-month term. And I can go through the normal ordering process like that. Now, the reason I've done this is I want to show that the LOA will get generated for me, and the process that a customer would normally use to build that is quite straightforward. But what we will see in the next stage is obviously if I had requested the cross connect, that would be followed up from our operations team. We don't have an SLA on the target timing. The components that are required within a data center are fully up to that data center. However, the standard lead time on a port where I'm getting my LOA itself is not to bill you until one of two things happen. Either that cross connect is live and we start seeing traffic across that port, or at least the light across that port, or 14 days have elapsed. So we're generally allowing 2 weeks for that service to build. All right. So that's the component that I wanted to speak about in terms of the port ordering improvements. And the next is we'll go into MVE and talk about the improvements there and the new sizes that are available. So much like building a port, instead of clicking Create Port, I'm going to click on Create MVE. And those who've ordered MVEs before would notice a change straight away, which is we're not building that locations page. We're going straight into the vendor page. So we've basically flipped the sequence, and this is to specify where we might have particular vendors that might filter those locations at a later date. So I won't go through all of the list there. We can see the major vendors, and they fall into, as I said, one of those 3 categories being SD-WAN, routing, or security. And I can pick on one of those vendors. We might choose 6Wind in this case. And further from that, I can actually see what versions are available. So for some of these, we will maintain multiple versions. I'll choose the Cisco Catalyst 8000V in this case. I might choose to load a earlier revision or the latest revision. Even if I have an early revision, it is possible for me, once that VM is set up and running, obviously to upgrade that. I have full access to that box. So returning after that, we see a list of all of the locations and the diversity zones. So some of these are built with dual diversity zones in specific data centers or crossing multiple data centers. One might be red in a specific metro and another might be in the blue zone, and they match across our ports and MCRs as well. So that's a way for you to build that diversity. It does require building twice, but that's something to consider in terms of active-active or active-passive high availability. Now, what I see in this list is all of those sites, but as well flagged by the availability. And you'll see what's new here is the addition of the 16 vCPU 64 gig and 32 vCPU 128 gig instances. I don't have them available for ordering in this account just yet, but we can see the 2, the 4, and the 8 available. If I wanted to filter for those to say what's available in Australia, we can see those locations, and only one of the locations being IC2 is currently constrained that we don't have any of the 8 vCPU options available. However, noting that that is in Sydney, I could then filter this down to say, does that exist in the red or the blue zone? And we can see Macquarie IC2 exists in the red zone, but it is in Sydney, so I could look to other sites that are also in Sydney that do have that capacity available. So for example, SY1 and NextDC S1, as well as the Macquarie site. So that allows me to build. In this case, I could build the 8 vCPU core instance, and I can bring that into my cart. So here we go, 8 vCPU, and it will return a no term, a 12-month up to 3-year term as well. Now, interestingly, the difference between a port and an MCR or an MVE in terms of minimum terms, no minimum term is actually just that. With the port that I ordered before, and we'll show that very briefly, A minimum term is 1 month. The difference being on the virtual appliances, if you were to run that for, let's say, a test and development workload for 1 week, we charge you exactly 1/4 of that. So it's quite flexible. This port that I spoke about before now has the LOA, so it's possible for me to send that off to the data center. But in the interest of time, we're going to rock along to the last point, which is building jumbo frame support on VXCs that are connected to MCR. Now, in the interest of time, I have built an MCR already, and here's one that I have sitting in Melbourne. This is a 1 gig MCR. It's currently sitting on a term, but there's nothing attached to it. So I've just built this as standard. And if I look at the configuration, I have no filter lists, either prefix or packet-based filtering. This is a new functionality as well. I think we've covered in not one of mine, but another of the team's drop-in sessions that basic ACLs, access control lists, are now available on MCR. Today's demonstration will, in fact, further build on that and allow us to bring the jumbo frame support onto an MCR connected VXC. In this case, we're going to build to Amazon, and I'll be choosing hosted VIF. This selector allows me to see the latency between where I am and the on-ramp location. So in this case, it's preferring Melbourne. I'm going to build a 1 gig connection in this case, and I'll just accept the defaults here. All that's required for me to populate is this field here, which is the account ID, and I'm going to use one that I have for demo and testing. And that will then allow me to bring that connection live. So let's click on that and pass that through to AWS. All right. So what's happening now in the background is this connection is building in real time. It will become available in the AWS console. It's currently not there, but it will take about those 60 seconds to show that it is in a state where I can accept it, and it should come up in this list here. But bringing back to this connection, whilst that's actually building, we can step through some of those features that are available. So this shows me the A-end connection details, and all of these IP layer 3 configurations are automatically configured. And the component that I wanted to highlight is that the MTU by default is set to 1500, which has been the standard for all of the MCR connections that are available. I mentioned that NAT Gateway is available. We do support NAT. It's slightly more limited than the NAT Gateway specific functionality in terms of the throughput, but we do have NAT enabled as an option. NAT isn't able to be enabled as an option on those specific VXCs, and we start to see that in use with customers who are building public VIFs. So going to not just the private component, but the public component of cloud. And that would be the difference here that we see. But whilst I've been talking, that connection is actually now showing. We can see the MTU is currently set to 1500, so that will match, and I can actually accept that connection now. So that will start the process of bringing that live. Now, in doing so, that actually had an unintended effect, and the other unintended effect is that I wish to change this MTU. So two things to note is by attaching that to a gateway, my BGP settings would have changed. The Amazon AS number has changed, and I wish to change that MTU greater than 1500. We can note that jumbo frame capable is set to true. So something that I would be able to then do is click on enabled, and that would then change my MTU sizing to 9001, and I do need to say, yes, that's me. So noting those two things that I need to now modify, the MTU and the Amazon side AS number, I'll just copy that as well. So we can come back to the Megaport portal and let's view that VXC. All right, now those fields are editable. And the first one that I want to change is the MTU. So I can set that to 9001. We can note down below that the values are valid between 1280 and 9074. So there are some services within AWS that actually don't use 9001. They'll use 8500, for example. So 9001 is the one that we're using in this instance. So I will save that. The other change that's required would be the BGP connection, and that's been automatically negotiated, but it's been done to the standard AWS AS here, which is 7224. So the only other change that I need to make is to bring that to the gateway that I specified when I accepted that connection. So in the interest of time, as I said, and getting to questions, we won't see this connection come live, but that's all that I need to do to bring that service live. We can see that it's trying to get BGP brought up, but it's got the wrong AS number. But once that becomes live, we'll see that mirrored both in the logs, in the status under details, that we'll start to see that go Green and BGP will come live, but they will also be available in an upstate across the AWS side connection. So I think we've covered the highlights there. The jumbo frame support is enabled, and as I showed, you can do that on a per VXC basis. It depends on the services that you're using. In particular, today I showed AWS, and it allows you to enable jumbo frames at those different rates and retag the VXC. That's it. I will ask my colleagues online just to see if there's any final questions that might need to get wrapped up. Otherwise, any questions on the line for Slack? If not, I think we will call that a day for today. And thank you, as I said, for the 30th of May for the drop-in. Hope to see you again soon.